Good evening, everyone, and welcome to day 14 of our Salesforce admin training. And today we're going to start something more interesting, and that's workflow and process automation in Salesforce. So far you've learned a lot about the Salesforce platform, and you've seen what you can do with the Salesforce. Everything you've learned up to yesterday is intuitive enough, and it's mostly the click side of Salesforce. But right now we're going into automation. Automation is very subjective to who you are, how you want to reason, how you want to solve a problem. Because with automation, you can solve problem differently depending on your thought process. However, you need to understand the fundamentals of automation in Salesforce. So when we talk about automation in Salesforce, we want to talk about what happens when someone clicks, when someone saves a record, when someone creates a record. That's automation. We want to put some things in the background, some functionalities, some processes in the background that would happen that the user might not see. Okay, that's automation. Anytime you see that you're repeating a task, can you automate that process? If you create a new opportunity, can you create a follow-up task for that opportunity? So any user or any sales agent working on that opportunity can create a task or can follow up on an opportunity because a task was created. Okay, so according to Salesforce, we're supposed to learn this: identify the appropriate automation. As you can see, Salesforce says identify the appropriate automation. That means Salesforce is not requiring you as an admin to develop automation. They just want you to identify. So for consultants, you might need to develop the automation. You might need to create that automation, okay? But for admin, you're supposed to identify. That's a keyword. So I wouldn't overwhelm you with certain activities. However, if you are interested, I would like you to go through previous videos as well as go through the trailhead, which I'm going to recommend your tutors or your mentors to work on maybe tomorrow, because I think you might be having the last tutorial this weekend. So this tutorial for this weekend will be strictly for automation and flows. Okay. So again, you can probably ask your mentors other areas which we covered today as well in the tutorial, which is fine, but I want them to focus more on flows because it's going to be your last tutorial for Salesforce admin, and I want them to maybe give you a different perspective or different approach or different ways which they can teach this, because it's very tricky. You can learn it tonight and get it once and for all, or you might need to reinforce your knowledge by practicing and listening to different speakers or mentors to also guide you through. So again, to identify appropriate automation, and we're going to be talking about flows, most likely in the next session of this, and we're going to be talking about approval process. But then again, approval process is a bit tricky, very technical, so I wouldn't go too much into approval processes. However, I'm going to touch base on it. I'm going to tell you what it's used for and how you can use it at work. Okay, I like to break things down, but there's not much to break down here other than the fact that you need to know that workflow rules, process automations are declarative tools. Okay, you need to understand what they are. What are declarative tools, and what is the difference between declarative and programmatic? By declarative, I mean the things you can do, the click things that you can do. But programmatic are the people that write code, the developers. Those are the people that write code. So when they talk about declarative, they talk about things that you have to use the interface to do. But programmatic, those are the things that they have to write code for. Okay, we're not going to be touching code unless you're a developer. But for declarative, definitely it's something you need to know. Okay, I talk about order of execution, but I will talk about it again today. Then we go into workflow rules and process builder, and hopefully by tomorrow or maybe next week, depending on what decision you guys have, we're going to go through flow builder and approval process. So without wasting much of your time, let's go right into the org and start working with automations in Salesforce. So I'm going to go to my trailhead. I log into my trailhead. Again, please, I want you to get up to 25,000 points in your trailhead. So if you're a professional and you want to get a job, my expectations are you should be having 25,000 points at the end of your training. By April ending, you should be having that, okay? By the end of your training, you should be having that. It's going to be a criteria for your work experience. I want you to be well-grounded, not just from my online live classes, but it should also be from you learning by yourself. And you can also accumulate points by just attending the clinic. You don't have to attend the clinic, but if you want to accumulate points, you can watch the videos for the clinic or attend the clinic, okay? So Salesforce expects us to know automation tools. Now, let's talk about automation tools in Salesforce. In Salesforce, what are automation tools and what are they used for? When we're working with cases, when we create a case from the website, you know, the case was created in the org, and there was an email that was sent. You know, the email was sent as a result of what? Automation tool created, or as a result of the automation placed on the case object, okay? And the feature of auto response through is one of the automation tools which Salesforce has developed, okay, out of the box for us. So this lead auto response through is an automation, right? You created a case from the website, you get an email, is an automation, but this is out of the box automation feature of Salesforce on the case object. But there is more to that. What if you want to do your own? You want to do that automation yourself, and it's not on the case, it's on another object that is not standard. How would you do it? Salesforce gives you that automation tools that you can use. And we have 3 to 4 types of automation tools, depending on how you want to see it. We have at least, I would say 3, but according to Salesforce, we have 4 automation tools, and they are the workflow rules, okay? The workflow rules, which is this, the process builder, which is this, as you can see, it's under process automation, okay? And we have flow, the flows, which is this, and we have approval process. Approval process is a bit tricky, okay? Which is that you don't really need to know much about approval process, but you just need to know that this is what they do in Salesforce, and this is how you can utilize it, okay? So those are the 4 automation tools we have in Salesforce. 3 are very important: the workflow rules, the process builder, and the flows, okay? So now let me give you a background facts or background information about when you need an automation and why you need an automation, okay? So now let's say we have this opportunity, and we've created this opportunity, and it's looking good. But anytime we close an opportunity, we want to create maybe an order record, or we want to fill an information, not even opportunity, let's say cases. You have this case. Anytime we close a case, we want to specify the close reason, okay? Or we want to give a close reason that is based on certain information automatically. For instance, if we specify, we created a case, I want to close this case, but there are some features within this case that would let us specify a reason for closing the case. For instance, if this case was closed as a result of the fact that it was a duplicate, okay, it was a duplicate in the system, you can automatically create a reason, okay? You can automatically create a reason, update this case reason by saying, the reason why this case was closed was because we have a duplicate in the system. Alternatively, if a case was created right now, we want to create a task and assign that task to someone within the system to execute or to work on this case. You know, typically we assign a case to an owner, which is fine, but an owner might not see the urgency, or the owner might not see the urgency to take up the case that particular day. But if you have a task on your to-do list, the task could be, I want to make sure that I close all my tasks that was created today. That could just be a task, right? You come to work and you see tasks on the task board and you want to make sure that all the tasks for today is closed. How do you create this task? You could create a task as a result of creating a case. So how do you link creating a case to creating a task? That's automation. Automation helps you to create other things that can be managed behind the scene. So you don't have to manually create them. When you have an opportunity, when you close a lead or convert a lead, you want to create a follow-up task to call that lead. I want to follow up with a lead anytime a lead comes into the system. I want to create a task that will follow up with a lead. I have a new lead right now from the website. I wouldn't know if a lead comes into the system, but if a task is created on my task object to follow up with a lead, then I don't have to manually create that task because a lead has been created. The task will be automatically created. That's automation. So I'm giving you an overview of what automation is in the Salesforce and the capabilities of automation. Okay, so according to Salesforce, we have 4 automation, and it is the workflow, process builder, approval process, and the flow. Let's start with workflow. Workflow. What is workflow? Workflow essentially is the flow of the work you are doing. And if you call it workflow rules, it is a set of rules created for the flow of the work you're doing. Just English definition, okay? Workflow rules can be used, okay, for automating simple business process, such as sending an email alert. What do I mean by that? Anytime I create an opportunity, I want to inform my manager that I have just created an opportunity. I can use a workflow rule to automate that task. Anytime a student is registered in the system, I want to send an email to that student because student is a standard object. Student is a standard object. That means it doesn't have that fancy auto response rules that we have on the case. How can I send an email every time I create a new student? Right now, I'm going to create a new student and, I can put an email field on the student object. Let's quickly do that. Student. I'm creating a new field on the student object called email, okay? So I want to send an email to the student anytime I register a new student in the system. But as you can see, there is no system in place that would enable that, right? There is no system in place that will enable that. You can use workflow to automate that process. So workflow rules can be used for automating simple business processes. Business said, send an email whenever a student has been registered in the system. Send an email whenever a customer bill has been paid. That's the simple business process you can use workflow rule to solve. Okay, so let's talk more about workflow rules and what you can do with workflow rules. Let's go to workflow rules. When you go to workflow rules, you'll be presented with this opening. Okay, one thing you can do with workflow rule or workflow rules, let's read the definition of workflow rules. Workflow rules automate the following types of action based on your, let's call this business processes, okay? Task. Workflow rule can be used to create a task and assign a new task to a user, role, or record owner. So what does that mean? Anytime I register a student, I can create a task for an admin that says, call this student and find out more information. Maybe, you can now do maybe, I create a new student, and if this student, okay, if this student does not have a department, create a task for a system admin or a business system admin or whatever it's called in a university to follow up with the student to find out what departments this student belongs to. You can use workflow rule to create that task automatically. So you don't have to create that task by yourself. Because the department is blank, you can use workflow rule to create a task that says, call the students, and assign that task to someone that is responsible for calling the students. In addition to that, as I said, email alerts. Workflow rule can be used to send an email to one or more recipients you specify. What does that mean? It means I'm using student as an example because obviously it's logical to just quickly use that. I could use maybe leads, opportunities, and the like, but this one makes sense. I register a new student in the system. I want to send a welcome email to that student. I want to send a welcome email to that student. Workflow rule can be used to send email response after you've registered a student. Field updates. Workflow rule can be used to update a field. What does that mean? It means anytime let's say I have an opportunity record and I mark the opportunity as decision make as current stage. So when these opportunities are decision makers, as you can see, the stages are decision makers. I can use workflow rule to update the next step. Maybe the next step is another thing I need to be checking for. But when it's at the decision maker, I can say the next step is call the director of the company. Okay? I can say call the director of the company, and workflow rule can be used to do that. So workflow rule can be used, the field updates on workflow rule can be used to update that field automatically. That means you don't have to manually type, call the director of the company. You're just making that decision. Anytime the stage is in decision makers, the next step should be call the director of the company. But you don't want to manually type that in. You use workflow rule field updates to do that. Lastly, workflow rule can be used to send outbound messages. What does that mean? You can send a secure XML outbound messages such as configurable API message in XML format to a designated listener. This is a bit advanced in terms of how it works, but let me just give you a very simple definition of XML. XML is like HTML that is marked up in XML. So if you've ever worked with HTML marked up in arbitrary tag, as you can see, a path is an arbitrary tag. This is an arbitrary. Again, if you don't understand HTML, don't worry too much about this, okay? Now, your normal HTML is H1, H2, div, AP, and the likes. But path is not a recognized HTML tag. So in XML, you can mark up anything, okay? You can mark up anything and you put something inside that markup. But make sure that whatever you open, you close in XML, right? And this is the message you are sending out. I am sending the windscreen wiper automatically removes rain from your windscreen. I'm sending it to another system. So what does that mean in terms of outbound messages? Outbound messages are messages that are going away from Salesforce into another system. That's workflow. Workflow can be used to send outbound messages, messages that does not belong to Salesforce, but is going to maybe Google or anything else. And it is in an XML format, okay? So anytime you want to send a message out of the Salesforce platform, you can use workflow, okay? So now let's see how it works. In order to use workflow route, something must happen, okay? Something must happen in the system. What triggers the workflow rule? As you can see, when I said whenever a student record is created, I want to send an email. What would make a student record to be created? anytime you enter a student record, anytime you save this record, that's when you trigger the workflow. So a workflow rule can only be triggered if you save a record. You save a record. Okay, when you save this record, then you can trigger a workflow rule. For other process, we're going to get there. But for workflow, something must happen. And the thing that must happen is this save button must be clicked. If you don't click on this save button, you cannot trigger a workflow rule. You cannot make it happen. So now that you want to create a new student, you want to send an email, then you click on this save. Then if you've created a workflow rule on the student object, then it is going to carry out the action. Now, let's go back into workflow rule. If you are creating a new rule, let's say I want to create a simple rule that says, send an email to a student whenever a student has been registered. I go to the object, which is students. Okay, I click on next and I say, send student registration email. That's the rule name, but make it very simple, very descriptive. So whenever you're looking for it, you can find it, because trust me, you can see a lot of rules in your workflow. As you can see, one thing about Salesforce is about rules. Anytime you want to create automation, just know that it's rules. Anytime you want to check something, validation rules. Anytime you want to automate something, automation rules, assignment rules, escalation rules. And what does that mean? What does that tell you? It tells you that rules are just instructions you are given to the system. They are a set of instructions. So now you're saying to create student registration email. Now, what is the criteria? What is the criteria? Salesforce is even giving you hints. How do I choose criteria? You can read these hints if you want to, but let's go back to here. What is the criteria? What does this mean? What does this mean to Salesforce? Created. The first one is created. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means anytime I'm creating a student and this button is save, I want this workflow rule to trigger. I want the workflow rule to trigger because I have created a new student record. That is what created means. Created and every time is edited. Created and every time is edited means that anytime I create a student record and every time I edit a student record, I want to do what? I want to trigger that workflow rule. It's intuitive, right? I have created a student record. I trigger the workflow rule. That's my settings for the number one. For the number two, I have created and every time it is edited. That means even if I have created it, it has sent the workflow, it has sent that email. Now I edit. Anytime I save that edit, it will still send an email. So remember, anytime you edit, it's going to send an email. And the last one, created, and anytime it's edited to subsequently meet criteria. This criteria is what you define here in the next action, okay? First of all, you give a name. You give a name for your rule. Second, evaluation criteria. Third is the rule criteria. What is the rule criteria? The rule criteria is what you are checking. The rule criteria is what you are checking. What does it mean to check something? When you're creating a student record, you have student name, you have department, you have email. You can only be checking what you have. You can only be checking whether the student name is there, whether department name is there, whether email is present. Okay, so now let's create a simple workflow rule that checks if the department is present or not. If department is present, do not do anything. But if the department is not present, I want you to send an email. Or better still, let's check email. If the email is present, let's send an email to the students that says, welcome to Blackforce. Anytime a student is registered and the email is present, that's when I want to send a welcome email to the students. So how do we do that? We say send student registration email. The criteria should be anytime it's created. Okay? I'm just using this as a starting point. Then I say email. This is the criteria I'm looking for. If the email is not equal to null. What does that mean? It means if this email is not empty. So this is a reverse logic. If it is equal to something, then you cannot predict all the emails you're going to enter in the student's record, right? Because you need to have all the emails before you can say if the email equals to xyz@gmail.com. But you can use a reverse logic that says if the email is not equal to empty, then I want this workflow rule to kick in. So we've created a simple workflow rule. The workflow rule says whenever a student record is created and the email is not null, I want you to send an email, okay? In workflow rule, once you've created the rule, you need to do one additional thing. And the additional thing is action. Remember, the actions of the workflow rule is send an email alert, update field, meaning that I can update a field on the object, send outbound messages, and create a task, okay? You can create task, you can send an email alert, you can update a field, and you can send outbound messages. So what do I want to do? I want to send an email alert, okay? But before I do this, I want to do what? I want to create an email template. Remember, whenever you're sending an email in the system, the first thing you need to do is to create a template. Otherwise, you'll be using an existing template that does not match the email you want to send, okay? So email templates. I select an email template. I'll just say student welcome email, okay? We've done this before, right? Where we're doing auto response through. So it's not new to you guys. And I'll put it in the public folder. Okay, then I say, welcome to Blackforce. Okay, and I'll just, because I want to use a student, I will use entity that is related. I will say it is student, okay? Do I have students? Student is not coming up, but don't worry about it. I need to check why it's not coming up. I wanted to use a match field. That's why I was looking for the student, but it's not coming up. I can check that later. So I think I must have, maybe we did not select something. Let me see again. It should come up. Service contracts. Okay, we can check that later, okay? I'll just say, hello there. Welcome to Blackforce. Okay, save. So now that we have the student welcome email, let's go back to our workflow rule again. We want to create what? We want to create an action, okay? I had email alerts, and I'll say, send welcome email to students. The unique name would automatically come in, okay? So don't edit it because you cannot put a space there. Then the object is student. Email templates. I'm going to select the email template I created. Okay. And this is a student welcome email. Then the recipient. The recipient can be a user. Who is a user? A user is someone that has access to your Salesforce org. We've done this several times. That's a user. But in this situation, who do you want to send an email to? You want to send an email to a student. And where is the email present? On the student object. This email is what we want, right? We want this email. So I'm going to go to the email field on the student object, okay? The email field on the student object. I select it and I put it here. Available recipient is the email field. I drag it here, okay? Then, according to workflow rule definition, we can send additional emails. Maybe I want to copy my manager, I want to copy the admin office, I want to copy the principal, whatever it is. I can send, copy up to 5 email addresses. Then I save. Okay? Now I have created a simple workflow rule that sends an email anytime the student has been registered. Remember, the action is whenever a record is created. And the criteria is if the email is not null. Okay? And the action is send welcome email. I activate this workflow and we're good to go. Then I go back to this object. I want to create a new student. I go to new and I said Blackforce demo, okay? Then I put the email and I save. Okay, I made the email unique, but I've already created a student with Blackforce demo. So I want to make, because I'll be doing a lot of practice with this, so I don't have to make the email unique, okay? As you can see, the email is unique. This is what we did yesterday. Data validation. I'm gonna take it away. I don't want to make it unique, okay? I save. Okay, so now this stuff should go new. I say Tope Olajide, then Blackforce demo at gmail.com. Okay. Then I save. Now the expectations are we've registered a new student. According to our workflow, this student should get an email, welcome email. So let's check this student email. Welcome to Blackforce. Can you see? Hello there, welcome to Blackforce. This is automation. We did not even need to type that email. The email was sent automatically because of the automation we put in place. So let me go back again and explain what we've just done. We have created a student on the student object. That one, we don't need automation for. However, business has asked us, I want every student that is registered in the system to receive an email, as long as the email field on the student's registration form is not null. That's the business requirement. Now, how do you solve that as an admin or a consultant? You go to Salesforce. You know that Salesforce has 3 types of automations. 4 if you're looking at approval process. The first one is workflow. The second one is process builder. And the third one is flow. You now find out which one can solve this problem easily without stress. You can use any one of them. But workflow seems like an ideal because workflow can solve an email alert. I just want to send an email alert. Okay? Then you continue. You create an email alert rule, okay, which is this, and you specify the criteria, entry criteria. When it comes to entry criteria, what Salesforce wants is this. Salesforce is asking you, what should trigger this workflow rule? When a student, that means this this workflow rule is listening to a student. Is listening. By listening, is expecting something from the student object. So we're saying anytime a record is created on the student object, anytime a record is created, I want you to check the email field of that record. If it is not null, then trigger this workflow. That's what it's saying. Now that you've created the entry criteria, action, okay, now I've triggered this workflow rule. What exactly do you want to do? What do you want to do in that workflow? I want to create an action. What action is it? I want to send an email. That's the action you have created, email to be sent. And what is that email? The email is using the template we created. We created a template, right? Now, who should receive that email? I want to use an email field present on the student object. Email field present on the student object. So I go to the email field as a recipient type, not the user, not the case team, not whatever, but the email field. And there's only one email field present on the student object, which is this. So if we add another email field, let me just give you an example of whereby you have two email fields on the student object. You will see that email field coming up. You will create if you go to the student object and you create a new field called email, you can call it email 2. Email 2, right? Next, save. So if you call it email 2, right? Go back to this workflow and refresh. And you say email field, right? Email field. Can you see email 2 is now present? So it's going to be looking for just email field. Okay, but obviously we don't need this. I'm going to take it off and I'm going to just cancel. So now you've seen how to create a simple automation whenever a student is created. Guess what? If I edit this and I put it as 2 and I save, am I going to get an email alert or not? No, I wouldn't get an email alert. Do you know why? There's no email alert. Do you know why? Because the workflow rule says, what does the workflow rule say? The workflow rule says you should only send the email alert. You should only send the email alert whenever a record is created on the student's object. Now, I want to edit that criteria. Anytime a record is created and edited on the student object, and I save. So now this workflow rule will trigger anytime a record is created, and if I edit this record and I save, is it going to send workflow rule or not? It will not send, it's going to send because I have edited the field, right? I have edited the field. Now, what you need to check is this. If you edit this field, it will check, it will send the workflow rule because hold on for 1 minute. And every time it's edited, okay. But the email is not null. Just give me 1 minute. Subsequently meet the criteria. Okay, this is the third one. This is the third one. Subsequently meet a criteria, meaning that, okay, let's say email is being created not equal to null. Okay, so now it sends an email. The next time you save this, it shouldn't send an email. Do you know why? Because you have already sent an email to this student. Because it is not like subsequently meets criteria, and this is very tricky, okay? Because you've already sent an email, it shouldn't send the email again because the email has already been sent. And let's test this. edit, and I'm just gonna save. Okay. As you can see, nothing has changed in the criteria, right? So it's not sending the email. And that's the difference between subsequently meeting criteria or not. So you don't want to be sending an email all the time. You don't want to be, okay, I've edited this stuff. Why would you be sending email because you just edit a student record? You already sent the welcome email, right? And sending the welcome email again because you edit the student record is not logical, it's not intuitive. So Salesforce puts this criteria in place such that once the first email has been sent, do not send an email again. Imagine sending welcome email every time you change the student record. That doesn't make sense. So subsequently meeting criteria means that, okay, I've already sent it previously, don't let me send again, unless something has changed in the student's situation, okay? If something has changed, then I will send, okay? Now, that is the criteria settings, okay? You've seen how created works. You've seen how created and every time is edited work. And you've seen how every time is edited to subsequently meet criteria, okay? So please have that at the back of your mind. If you've already sent it, it's not going to send again if you select this. Number two, when you have a workflow room, you have two types of action. It is called an immediate action and a time-dependent action. What is the difference between an immediate action and a time-dependent action? An immediate action is something that should happen immediately, obviously, from the English word immediate, right? It is something that should happen immediately. However, for a time-dependent action, it is something that should happen in the future. What is the use case of immediate action and time-dependent action? If you have a customer and the customer pays a bill, you want to send an invoice to the customer immediately. That's an immediate action. Okay? You want to send an email to the customer immediately. You don't want to procrastinate. Customer has paid, they need to get an email confirmation of the receipt or whatever it is. Time-dependent action, a very good use case is your customer is owing you $50 and the bill is due next week. You don't want to send immediate action saying you're owing us $50 bill, but it's not due yet. It is due next week. So you want to do what they call a time-dependent action. A time-dependent action is something that would happen in the future. Okay? It is something that will happen in the future. And if you want to create it, you cannot create it on an active workflow. Disable the workflow and you can create a time-dependent action, okay? And you cannot create it using this criteria. You cannot add time-dependent workflow action with this option, okay? So you cannot do this because it's going to be edited. And once it's edited and you've sent message to the queue, Salesforce will still execute that queue, right? So you have to stop that queue, and that process is very long. So you can use this for time dependent, or you can use created for time dependent. So time dependent is like, okay, I've created a bill. Okay, I've created a bill and edit. I've created a bill and I need to send an invoice to the customer 7 days after creating that bill. That's future activity. It's not immediate, it is future. That's why you can create time dependent. 7 days after I created that bill, I want to trigger the workflow. Meaning that after I've created the bill, trigger the workflow. You can select created dates and you save. Meaning that after 7 days, this action would happen. Again, the action that is happening is still send email alerts, field updates, outbound message, or create tags, right? there is not much difference to the action that is happening. However, there's I'm pretty sure there's a tax on that is not just showing. There's not much that is happening. The only difference is that I am only sending that email after 7 days, okay? But obviously we cannot test that because we cannot wait for 7 days to experiment that. But again, that's workflow in action. That is the first thing we've done with workflow. Now let's do another second thing with workflow, update departments, okay? I want to update department if the department is blank. Before I update, let me create a new department called no department, or I'll just call it management. Okay, management department. And I save. So now I have a department called management, but I want to use workflow rule to update the department anytime the department is empty. If the department is empty, I want to, obviously you don't want to use the same workflow rule that is saying this, but then again, we can use this because there is no big deal. Alternatively, if you're not really checking on email, actually, let's create a new workflow rule because that makes logical sense. I want to create a new workflow rule that is checking my departments and looking for empty departments on the student record. Anytime the department is blank, rule name is check department. Okay? Department, student department. Where is department? So I can use yeah, let's use email, but let's just use student created date not equal to null. Save. Action field updates. This is just a test, okay? I want to check something. Yeah. Because department is a lookup, you cannot update a lookup field in workflow. You can do this if it is a master detail, right? But you cannot update a lookup field in workflow. So what you can do is you can update obviously the fields that you can update are this field, this email field, this stuff and the likes, right? But the ones that you cannot update are the lookup that which because this student is having a lookup to the department. So that's not a good example. Let's see what we can edit. Okay, email two. Okay, we can update email 2. That's fine. Email 2. Okay, so I want to use a formula to update email 2. I want the email I place here to be the same email I'm placing here, okay? But I don't want to obviously type it twice. I want to update it using the workflow. It's not a good example, but then again, it's an example, right? It gives us insight, okay? So I want to update the email 2 with email 1. That's what this workflow is saying. Save. So anytime the created date is not null, which 100% of the time, whenever you create a record, the created date will not be null, okay? I want to update the department. No, I want to update the email 2 to be equal to the value of email field, okay? So that's an example of a typical update workflow. Done, activate. Then I refresh this. It's created, right? So I need to create a record. New, another student and Blackforce demo at gmail.com. So I'm not going to put email 2, okay? But I expect the value of this email to be put in this place, okay? As you can see, it has updated the value of email to this place, okay, to email 2. So technically what that means is that if you know that there are some repeated data that needs to be entered, you can use workflow rule to automate that process, okay? And there's so many things you can do as well. You don't have to be checking empty. I'm just using a very simple example. You can be checking if the email has been changed. If this email has been changed, for instance, I can say if the email is changed. So I can say not equal to null, trigger, okay? But the action which I'm looking for is this. Edit. So, let's go back to the workflow rules. Continue. The check departments, edit this. So instead of criteria, you can use formula, okay? Instead of criteria, like this, checking created dates not equal to null, which is so basic, you can use formula and say, I'm looking for the department and I'm checking if departments, you can say, no, let's say if the email has been changed, okay? And you can put a function. This is formula. If you're doing clinic and everything, you should know how a formula works. So I wouldn't go much into details about formula, but you're saying, okay, its change cannot be used. Let me see if I can convert it. I don't know if it's going to work, but let me see. Test is expecting number. Okay. Let's use name. Okay, let's use name. Student. I want to use student name. Okay. It's change. What can I use on the student that is change can be accepted on? Let me use grade because it has to be number, right? It's saying it has to be number or something like that. So let's use grade. Let's use average grade. Check. Okay, let me see. It's change. It's change. When is change function used? Assignment rules, that's not it. It's change. It's pick list. It's change formula. It's change formula. Amount data. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's fine. So what kind of, you don't write that kind of formula, just change the formula to something like this. Let me see, according to Salesforce, it's always good to use Salesforce official because I believe you can change the name. You can change the name, right? Maybe we just need to create another field, but let me just see. It's change. It's change. Okay. Is change field, replace field with the name of the field you want to compare. The following validation rule prevents user from changing an object name after it has been created. Okay. Oh yeah, this is preventing the object, so you cannot use that as a criteria. That's fine. So we can use something else. Let's use another operator. The operator could be, actually we can use blank value, right? Blank value expression substitute. Okay, if it's blank, so what it's saying is that if an expression is blank, you now substitute it with this expression, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a very simple operator. Is blank, expression, checks whether an expression is blank and returns true or false. Okay, let's use what field can we use here? We can use, let's try department. This should work. Check. Okay, that's okay. So it's blank is a criteria. So it's blank is almost equal to it's null. okay, for departments. So you should kind of like get the gist, right? It's, previously I was looking for departments and I was looking for department is null. But if you're using formula, you can easily write that the department is null using is blank, okay? And is going to update this field. But remember, if you're updating email 2, if department is blank, okay? So now let me change this to every time it's created and edited. So I can just update this. First of all, take off this, save. Yeah, because that rule is still active, it's going to work. Let me create a new student. Okay, new student. Department, I'm going to make it blank purposely. blackforcedemo@gmail.com. Okay, save. I've not disabled the previous rule. Is blank, is a blank, rule criteria is blank, and field update this. Oh yeah, it's meant to work, okay? Because I'm checking is blank department, and I'm saying if it's blank, update email 2. So let me create another student, and I'll put a department there, okay? Another student with department. So previously department is blank and is updating, which is fine. But now I'm going to say I have departments. That means do not update, okay? I have departments. I think I have engineering departments or whatever it is. I can create another one. Okay, another department, save. Right now, email 2 should not be updated because now department is not blank, okay? Okay, that's fine. So this is expectation, right? Email 2 is not updated because department is present. And the workflow rules say if department is blank, update email 2. If it's not blank, do not update, okay? So that's workflow rule generally. There is more to workflow rule than just what I've shown you. For instance, you can write complex logic. As long as you know how to write formula, you can write complex logic. But remember, anytime you want to send an email, anytime you want to update a field, anytime you want to create a new task, I did not demo a new task because it's pretty much easy, but anytime you want to anytime you want to create a task for a user, you can use a workflow rule. And lastly, anytime you want to send an outbound message, that means you want to communicate with a different system that is not Salesforce, you can use workflow. How you go about using the workflow, the logic you implement using the workflow is totally up to you, how you approach. As you can see, there's so many criteria I could have written, but remember, you don't write criteria that you cannot even analyze yourself. You need to be able to analyze that criteria on paper just to make sense out of that criteria. Then you can use it. In addition to that, you can also do filter logic, okay? You can do filter logic. For instance, in this criteria right now, we have student email not equal to 1. What if I want to say email 2 not equal to null, right? So this filter logic, you just like the reports we did yesterday, you can say 1 or 2, meaning that you're checking for 1. If 1 is successful, initiate the workflow, or 2 is successful, initiate the workflow. So this is going to say it has to meet one of these criteria. In addition, you can use what they call AND operator. The AND operator is it has to meet this criteria and it has to meet this criteria. That means you're using 2 things. Email is not blank. Email 2 is not blank. That's when the workflow rule should happen. So filter logic helps you to add up to 10 different conditions, and you can use filter logic to manipulate it. So what is the use case of this? If you're working on an opportunity, for instance, and you want to send an email to your manager, if the opportunity is $1 million and above, you can say opportunity is $1 million and above, or the opportunity is in the final stage. The stage is negotiation and review. So you can use that filter logic that says 1 million and above, or in the final stage, or you can even use both $1 million and above And in the final stage, send email to manager. Okay, so many ways you can use workflow rule. You just need to be solving a business problem. Okay, the business will be the driver of what condition you're putting for your workflow. So I'm going to take a quick pause here for you guys to ask me questions on the workflow. But remember, when you are creating a workflow, you create a criteria, you create a rule criteria, you create an evaluation criteria, you create a rule criteria. After that, you will now create an action, which can be email alerts, field updates, task, or outbound messages. Okay, please raise your hand up and I'll call you according to how your hands are being raised. Matilda, you can unmute yourself and speak, please.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so my question, when you did the edit and the create workflow rule, can we use different templates, or is it one email template that would apply to both? Because what if the template for create doesn't align with the kind of email template I want to use for edit?
You can only use one evaluation criteria to enter a workflow. As you can see, I want to send student registration. The evaluation criteria is you have 3 options, but you can only use one. You cannot use different templates unless you're creating another rule. Evaluation criteria means what should happen. At what point should the workflow rule trigger? For instance, I said to you, when you create a new record, I want this workflow rule to trigger. When you edit a record, I want this workflow rule to trigger. When you create and subsequently, when you create and edit and subsequently meet the criteria, I want the workflow rule to trigger. So evaluation criteria remains constant. The actions is different, okay? So you want to create a new rule to maybe send a different template when it is edited. But then again, you can logically do this and there are better tools to use. Remember, we're starting with the easiest of the tools. We're going to go into another tool and another tool tomorrow. Flow is much complex, but it can solve the kind of problem you're asking to be solved, okay? Babs, can unmute yourself and speak, please.
Okay, good evening, Babatope. How are you doing, sir? Hello, sir.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so one thing I'm not clear with is how many workflow rules am I able to set that is allowed? Is there an imposition of time limit? So the limit to how many I can set up? I'm not sure I heard that in the class.
Yeah, so again, these are not the kind of things you memorize, but as a consultant, you want to move away from creating numerous workflow rules. Salesforce is even trying to push, as you can see, when you're working with workflow rule, every time you want to create a workflow rule, Salesforce will give you an alert. Look at this alert. Go with Flow. With Flow Builder, the future of low-code automation. You can do everything you do with workflow rules and more with Flow. So Salesforce is already pushing you away from workflow rules because eventually they will decommission workflow rules and everything you're doing will be Flow. However, for now, it is still one of the requirements and you need to know that, okay? Because it's not going to decommission overnight. Having said that, anytime you're consulting, you can check number of, I think it's about 100 rules you can create, number of workflow rules in an object. In object, Salesforce, I think it's about 100 or so. I don't know, but you can check. These are the kind of things you can check. 300 active, so it's 300. 50 active workflow rules. By default, each object has 50 active workflow rules. Additional volume is available for 300. That means that you have to pay more to get 300, okay? But per object, you have 50 active workflow rules. So these are the kind of things you don't memorize. And Salesforce will not ask you in an exam. But if you're a consultant, you need to think through. When you're consulting for a business, ask the business, okay, how many workflow rules do you currently have? And how many are we creating according to this requirement you've given us, okay? So always put that into perspective and that would help you to address the situation of number of active workflow rules. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, it does help at least. Like you said, I don't need to memorize everything. I just need to know where to find information. I think that's the hallmark of a great consultant, right?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
No worries. Gaffer, please unmute yourself and speak.
Okay, thank you very much, Babatope. My question is the process automation, these workflow rules, when you are trying to set out the logic on value, is it all? Can we use zero, set the value to zero instead of leaving it blank as null, or it doesn't, or we have to go by putting it as blank to achieve null logic, the value, yeah.
Look at.
Yeah, can I set it as zero or just leave it as blank to achieve null logic?
One thing about Salesforce, or not Salesforce, about development is this: null, blank, zero, they mean something. Okay? In development, null means nothing is present. Zero means zero is present. So you can only use zero to work with numbers. Look at.
Okay.
We also have greater than, less than. So if you're working with numbers, then you can use zero. Zero is a number. Null is used for string. So an empty space is null, right? But no, not an empty space is raw. No, null means null. Nothing is there. But if you put space, obviously you cannot see space here because the default will just be null, right? But if you're working as a developer, this space, it means something. You understand? If you're working as a developer, this and this is different from this and this. Okay? But for Salesforce, it's better to just use null because it just makes it easier for you. You're checking one simple thing. Nothing is there. And that's what you're evaluating.
Okay, the second question is the flow process, the process of automation, the automation process. Can we use, it's like, when we are trying to set from case from web to case, phone to case for campaigns or some things, can we use process automation instead of using that procedure?
Yes.
Initially, like when we were trying to do campaign, we were using maybe from phone to web, or from web to phone and co. Can we use this process automation instead of using that? Because I see this as being straightforward and easier to achieve our goal than the initial process we did. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, sure. You can use it. You can use any, like I said, this is where you now start working as a consultant. You're providing recommendation. Why would you want to create a workflow rules if maybe Salesforce has already given you automation rules that has no limits, or it has more capabilities in the sense that, as you can see, workflow rules, you have limitation of 50 active rules. So if automation rules can solve that problem, why do you want to create a workflow rule that will limit you from solving a problem? Do you get what I mean? So you're working as a consultant based on cost benefit. You're doing analysis as you go, and you have to be recommending based on best practice as well, not just based on how comfortable you are with working with them, but based on industry best practice. I want to make sure that if I am gone, the next consultant that will pick up my job will not think I'm a stupid person. That's the way you have to be acting as a consultant, so you can get more recommendations. But if you're looking for easy way out, it's not a good in terms of industry practice, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
No worries. Chi, please, unmute yourself and speak.
Hi, Babatope, good evening.
Evening.
Hi, apologies, I got cut off at some point. I just wanted to know what, under the workflow actions, what's the difference between the email alerts and the outbound messages?
Oh, so you want to know the difference between email alert and out? There's no relationship in the first place. So email alert is sending email. You're sending email to a particular customer, user, or whatever it is. Okay, you're sending email. Outbound messages is something that has no relationship to Salesforce. Outbound messages is that you're sending messages to an external system. Maybe you want to alert a legacy system, a database, or you want to alert Google, or you want to alert HubSpot, alert MailChimp. This is an outbound message. It's like, you know what someone has the other day, MuleSoft. You want to send message to MuleSoft, you can use outbound messages as long as you're not doing anything that has to do with Salesforce. So you're relating with an external system, then you use outbound messages, okay?
Okay, because why I asked is because I had the same question as Matilda. So I was trying to see if there could be in the case where she asked that, are you able to set up different email alerts for the evaluation criteria, because you have create and edit, and you may want to use 2 different templates. So I was just trying to see if there was a workaround for that.
If you want to send different email, then you use a different rules, because every rule is based on a criteria.
No, I get it. That's fine. So my second question is for the workflow actions. You know, after you've created your workflow rules, is it possible to have a combination of workflow actions under a particular workflow rule?
Yes. You can create as many actions. Obviously, there'll always be a limit in terms of whatever you're doing, but you can create as many actions under this criteria of students not equal to null, and it will just be layering on top each other. I can create another action. This is another action, right? And I'll say I want to update the owner and blah, 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 you know, like, no, Q. Okay, I'll look for my name or something. I put it there. Then I save. This is another action, right? Now you can create another one. You can create another one. Okay, but this is the evaluation criteria. This is the evaluation criteria. This is the rule criteria, and these are the actions you can create. However, the catch here is the field update will run first. Anytime you're doing a lot of criteria, the field update will run first, then every other thing will follow after. Okay?
Okay.
That's the only
thank you. Yeah, that would have been my follow-up question. Thank you so much.
Okay, no worries. I think that's all the questions. So I think we can go to the next automation tool. Okay, so workflow rule is very simple, very straightforward. There's more to it than what I just showed you, but the only thing that is to it is just logic. You have to write your criteria properly. That's the only thing that you will struggle with if you're working with workflow. Okay, that's the only thing you will struggle with. Other than that, it's very basic, it's very straightforward and stuff like that. Now, let's go to the next automation. Remember, we're talking about automation. The next automation is the process builder. What is the process builder? Again, Salesforce is really pushing for flow. So that means they want people to start using flow. But a lot of banks, they use workflow rules, process builder, because you cannot just stop automation overnight. There'll be a project in the banking environment that will say, we are trying to migrate all our workflow rules into flow. And Salesforce even have some middlewares or some plugins that can help you do that. However, it's not something you take lightly when you're working with a bank. Imagine all those invoices you receive. Your phone company, you receive an invoice, you think someone is there sending that email? No, it's an automation they put in place. 7 days before the bill end deadline, send an email. If the bill is unpaid, after 7 days, send an email. That's automation. No one is monitoring you. Sometimes you think there's some spiritual stuff that is sending you invoice and bills. No, everything is workflow and automation. Automation has been put into place. So don't think there is someone behind the scenes sending you email. No one, when it comes to a bigger enterprise using automation tools, everything is automatic. Okay. So now let's go to process builder. Process builder is another automation tool. Okay. It's easier. I wouldn't say it's easier, but it is much intuitive from a user interface point of view. As you can see, I will show you how you can use it, but Salesforce is telling you it takes only a few clicks to select your object, define criteria, and activate the process, automate and activate. The only difference between the workflow rule and process builder is with the process builder, you can evaluate multiple conditions. You can evaluate multiple conditions using an if-else statement. If this is true, do this. Otherwise, do this. So there's multiple if-then statements compared to workflow rules, okay? Number two, everything you can do in workflow, you can do in process builder. You can do everything in workflow in process builder aside sending outbound messages. So the only advantage you have from workflow rule is sending outbound messages, okay? So now let's create a very simple process builder and I'll show you how it works. Okay, it says, again, Salesforce is pushing for flow, but let's use process builder, okay? You give a name for your process builder. Let's say send email alert. Again, whenever a student has been registered, I want to send an email alert. When should this start? Remember, regardless, a process builder can start based on when a record is being saved. Something needs to change in the system. And when can something change in the object? Something can change in the object when you create a new object. Something can change when you edit a new object. Something can change when you even delete the object. Okay, that means you're interacting with the object. So it's listening to the object and saying when record changes or a platform event message is received. What does it mean by a platform event message is received? A platform event message is a way you can communicate with Salesforce from an external system. You know, outbound message is sending something outside of Salesforce. Platform event is when something is coming into Salesforce. So maybe an order processing for an e-commerce website has just been received and the client details is coming into Salesforce. It's a platform event. If you know how to build platform events, it's more of a developer's activity. If you know how to build it, you can communicate using platform event for process builder. And you can invoke another process, meaning that I can have a process builder in place and I can create a new process builder that is as a result of an existing process builder. Okay, so let's select obviously the easy one, which we can demonstrate. Record changes, save. As you can see, it's very intuitive. Instead of you going, let me just open workflow rules by the side so you can see the difference between workflow rules and process builder. Okay, workflow rules. I create a new rule, send email, right? I select the object, student. Where's student? I select the object student. Can you see how long it took me to select the object student? For process builder, add object, student. Can you see? It's the same thing. Nothing is like, it's the same thing. And you're selecting the evaluation criteria. What starts the process? When a record is created, when a record is created or edited, there is no subsequently meeting criteria in process builder, okay? So I select when a record is created and I save. So I have done the first part, which is this next, okay? Send email. Okay, I'm just kind of like showing you an example, then I say created, okay? Now, criteria. This is the criteria I want to select. Email is not null, okay? Save. Okay, then I go to process builder, criteria, the same thing. I say check email. I give a criteria name and I say conditions are met. You know, in my criteria here, I could have used what? Formula, right? I could have used formula in my criteria. Look at criteria, formula. I could have used formula, right? And I could have used criteria, okay? This way, conditions, criteria, or formula. So it's the same thing. It's just more of a visual representation of what you're doing in workflow. That's it. That's it. You're creating process definition. What do you want? But in a more visual way, instead of having to be using all these, Salesforce moved from workflow to process builder. Now they are going to flow. Tomorrow you're going to be seeing flow, and flow is even much interesting than process builder. So we say when email field on the student object is null, right? Equals, this is where Gafara is coming in. It says string. Like this string is different from field reference, is different from formula. Okay, but I'm just gonna say string, and the value is let's use formula. Okay, and I'll just say no, or you can say is blank. System variable function, I don't need any. Is blank. Okay, you're saying is blank, and you're saying email. Okay. But then again, this doesn't make sense, right? Because you're already saying student email equals just a string, or you can even use reference. Reference is when you want to use something that you've created. Okay. For instance, if you want to use label, which I would expect you to use in your project, you can use global constant, and you can look up a particular label and say, okay, I want to create a field reference. This field reference will be referencing what you have in the student object. So when it comes to field reference, you are referencing something in the student object because that's a field present in the object. If you have string, you can just say, okay, no, I think no can work. Or you if you're very specific, because string is expecting a value, so null is not really an ideal stuff because null is a value. Let's say you want to have not equal start with is null, which is fine, and you're gonna say it's true. That's okay. This is if you want to use a boolean. Boolean is when you have a binary option, true or false. Okay. And if you want to say it's change, which obviously it's when you want to find out if this email has been changed or not. Okay. And again, it's either true or false. Is the email changed or not? Okay. Then you can say if the email contains Gmail, if it contains at Gmail. So many options you can put just to create a criteria. If the email contains at Gmail, that's actually a very good option. But obviously, you don't want to use Gmail, right? You want to use something that has to do with the school. Something that has to do with the school. So if you want to send emails to only internal students, then you can do something like this. Alternatively, you can create what they call label. You can create what they call label, and you can now say, you can now reference the label, but I don't want to show you that. That will be your project. But let me use an easy one that we've already used. Boolean equals true. Okay. When the email is null. Okay. When the email is null, which means when the email boolean equals true. Okay. Then you save, or you can create another logic. Just according to this, you can create another thing with process builder. You can create another thing entirely and you test that stuff, save. So now you have action in workflow rule. After you've created this evaluation criteria, you have actions. In process builder, you have action. What is the action? You can do a lot in process builder compared to workflow rule. For instance, you can do Apex trigger, meaning you want to call an Apex class. If you're a developer, you will get to know this. But if you're an admin, don't worry about it. You don't need to know it. Number two, create a record. In workflow, we can do 4 things: email alerts, field updates, outbound messages, and tasks. If you want to create a new record, you can use process builder. If you want to send an email alert, you can use Process Builder. You can call a flow in Process Builder. You can send a post to Chatter. What is Chatter in Salesforce? Chatter is when you're talking like you're chatting on all those social media and stuff, right? Maybe I'm going to show you this at some point during the training, but this is Chatter, okay? You can send a message to Chatter. You can update record. You can even submit for approval. But one of the most unique things about Process Builder is the ability to create record, which you cannot do with workflow. So let's select create record, okay? Create task, okay? And action name, create task, go to task, okay? Then it's gonna ask you, what do you want to do? You can just say assign, the task is assigned to the user that created the student, if you want to. And the priority for the task is I. The status of the task is not started, okay? So when you select task, all these required fields come automatically. If you select something else, the required fields of those stuff will come automatically, okay? So you don't have to worry about that. You can even create an account. And you can see the required fields when you're creating an account is an account. So I'll just say student account created. So meaning that the account you're going to be creating anytime a student is entered into the system would have the account name, as student account created, which is obviously dumb. You don't want to be creating the same account all the time that says student account is name, right? You want to use something more compelling, something more descriptive. Maybe the student name. Maybe the student name. Okay, that will now be the account name. Or you can use what they call a formula field that concatenates the name and the department. Okay, so it's going to be student name and the department name. Okay, so that's it. Use this formula, save. So let's walk back again to find out how to create a process builder. The first thing is we select the object of interest, student object. Then we use a criteria. What should trigger this process builder? When the record is saved and the student's email is null. What should happen? The action, the same way we've done for process or workflow rules, the action is create a new task. Obviously, is now create account, not task. Then what should be the account name? The account name should be this. If you want to create a time-dependent action, which is the same thing as the workflow rule time-dependent action. I want to, in 7 days, I want to send a reminder email. Okay? And the action is whatever you want to do. Create a new record, send an email alert, and the likes. So guys, this is almost the same thing as the workflow rules. The only difference is it's a user interface driven automation, meaning that you can logically be thinking, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? With workflow rules, once you've analyzed this criteria, it doesn't match this criteria, it ends. It ends, that's it. With process builder, you go and create a new criteria if you want to. That's the benefit of process builder. Like I said, if else statement, if this does not go through, if this does not match the criteria, let's use this. If this does not match, you can create as many with process builder. You can create as many, but the first thing is you need to make sure that you have this criteria. If you have this criteria, I will say check department, okay? And I will say student department. field reference. I don't want to use field reference. I'll use string engineering. So I'm checking if the student department is engineering for this criteria. Can you see? I've created this criteria. If it doesn't match, another one will come up. You can create up to 50 or something with Process Builder. But the bottom line is this. It gives you the opportunity to evaluate as many. So I think Matilda or someone asked earlier that if it is not matching this, what should I do? With Process Builder, you can check another thing. You can check another thing. You can check another thing. So when I said the choice of automation will be dependent on the business case, business use case. What do you or what has the business asked you to do? That will now determine whether you want to use a process builder or you want to use a workflow rule. As you can see, workflow rule is very simple, straightforward, and easy to go. With process builder, you can keep checking until you're tired. Well, technically not, but you get what I mean. You can keep checking and the likes, okay? So now I have action, which is to send an email alert, send registration email, okay? Then the email alert will be, no, I need to look for the, select an email alert for the object that is create one. I need to look for that email, yeah. Okay, save. That's it. You've created this process builder, okay? And is there any other thing we need to, I need to take this off, okay? Delete. Okay, the reason why it's not letting me activate the process builder was because I have a pending activity. I needed to have created something because I set a schedule, right? I need to do something for that schedule. I said in 7 days time. What should it do in 7 days time? That's what it says, okay? But I did not give that schedule. That's why it's not letting me activate. Once you've done everything, you can activate the process builder. If you don't activate any rules, it's not going to work. You have to activate the rules, okay? Now that you've activated the rule, you can go and test the rule. Remember, the criteria is if email is null. Okay, if email is null, which kind of like is stupid, right? Because if email is null, then how do you send email alerts? Do you get? So let's edit this. If you want to edit this, you will clone. Look at back to setup. Let me go to process builder. It gives you the process builder that is active. Right now, you cannot make changes to this process builder because it's currently active. How do you make it inactive? You click on the process builder and you clone the process builder. And it's going to tell you, do you want to create a new version of this process builder or you want to create an entire new process? But because you want to create a new version, you will click on version and you save. So now you can edit it because right now this version is not active, okay? So I want to edit it to make this one false. So if student email is null, is false, okay? If it's null, it's false. That means if email is true. Does that make sense? Save. And I activate, confirm. Hopefully this should work, okay? I go to the student object, object of interest, student, new, and I just say Jack Doe, okay? And no, don't let me use that. Let me use blackforce demo@gmail.com. But I want to put department, engineering department, okay? I think we have engineering department. Yeah, we have engineering department and I save, okay? Now that two things are supposed to happen. The first one is the email. So let's check if we have an email. We don't have an email. I'm going to check that rule again, just to make sure that the logic is right. But I want to check the account, Jack Doe Engineering, which is perfect. This is what we're expecting, okay? And we have Jack Doe, which is what we're expecting. An account has been created. Actually, it's checking for this, and it's fine. Do you know why we're not getting an email? I think the reason why we're not getting an email is because this rule has been evaluated. It's only when this rule has not been evaluated, it's going to come here. Okay? What is the criteria for here? Email is not null, which obviously would never, you never get this email, because if this email is not null, then it will come here, which means that it's going to send an email, but because the email is null, you wouldn't see it. So that process doesn't make sense. But for the use case, you can see that if this action or if this has taken place, it's not even going to come here. This needs to fail before it comes here. So the reason why email was not sent is because the action, the criteria was met and the action took place. So what I can do is I can negate this. Again, I'm gonna create a new version, and I will make this true, meaning that if email is true, like if there's email there, then this is not going to happen. It's going to come here. Okay, save, activate, confirm. Then I'm expecting it not to create an account. Okay, I'm expecting it not to create an account because now this is a negative case. Go back to student, new, do not create accounts. Okay, obviously doesn't matter because an account will not be created anyway. Hopefully it doesn't create. gmail.com, save. Okay, so let's go to the account. All accounts. Is there any do not create accounts? No. Okay, but let's go to this email. Let me refresh. Just before that, let me see this. Check department. What is check department? Oh, did I select engineering for that student? Let me see. The recent student is this. I did not select engineering. Okay, I need to select engineering because it's checking for engineering, right? With engineering, I'll just say with department engineering, but the bottom line is it has to be engineering. If it's not engineering, it's not going to execute that action. As you can see, if it doesn't execute the action, the next thing for it to do is to stop. Okay? It's going to stop. If there's nothing else, it's stop. Okay? If there's nothing else to check, it's going to stop. So the beauty of Process Builder is you can check up to almost 50, I think. There was a time I was in RBC. We created a Process Builder that was up to 50, and that was really scary. Okay, as you can see, the welcome email has now been sent. This is the welcome email that was sent 0 minutes ago because department is engineering. Okay, so this is automation in Salesforce. Again, you have to select the objects, then you create a criteria. If it matches, you have to create an action. And if you want something that is time delayed, you create a schedule action. What to do from here is now based on what the business requires you to do. You cannot just be creating workflow automation in place without the business asking you to create that automation, okay? It's very important that you are following the business requirement and not just creating not just creating workflow. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hand up if you have any questions regarding workflow rules, automation, process, and automation that is not flow yet. We haven't done flow, but in terms of workflow rules and process builder, please raise your hand and ask your question, because your project will be pretty much dependent on this. Please ask your question as much as possible, but limit it to process builder and workflow rules, okay? Babs, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Yeah, thank you again. So if I have to summarize today's class, I'm just going to clarify. If I have to think about, if they say, okay, what is the biggest difference between the two automation that we discussed today? The workflow rule, basically, the key thing it has is that it allows you to also enables you to create outbound messages. That's the key difference between it and process builder. But the advantage the process builder has is that he allows you to also do a lot of what I call what if kind of what I call a decision criteria, right? It gives me more options to do that. Number one. Number two, he also allows us to also leverage a record in here that we cannot do inside workflow rule. Is that going to be a substantive summary, or is there something that I'm missing?
Yeah, that's fine. That's good summary. Well done. Yeah. Joy, unmute yourself and speak, please.
Okay, so hi. It's I think it's similar to what he asked. So I was just going to say, so in summary, the choice of workflow automation process, whether process builder and or workflow rule, the choice to use is entirely dependent on the Salesforce administrator and what the company wants, the type of workflow process they want us to generate, right? Because that's what I'm asking, like it's completely dependent on the Salesforce admin, maybe which type he or she is more comfortable with, and the scenario. Let's say you give us in our project, for example, might determine which we would use. That's just what I wanted to.
Yes, but not what you're comfortable with. What is the best solution? What is the best practice? For instance, if you want to do record creation, obviously you cannot use workflow rule, right? That's one is like a deal breaker. A deal breaker meaning that it is not possible to use workflow rule to create a record. However, if you want to, you can use workflow rule or process builder to update a field, a simple field. But now the question will now be, which one would you recommend to the business? Do you want to use process builder to update a field, or you want to use workflow rule? Now is a choice of, okay, workflow rule is just a very simple automation. Let's use it. Okay. Now, if you have workflow rule that requires you to create 2 rules or 3 rules, checking logic, which is fine. On the same object, you're checking logic, which is fine. You can create 2 rules because of the workflow rule. However, with process builder, you can create this check in the same objects. So now the question is, would you use workflow rule that will enable you to create 2 rules, or process builder that will help you to do if else? What should you recommend? Recommend process builder because you can check 2 things at the same time. But with workflow, you can only check 1 at the same time. Okay, so always think about that. Which is the best? Am I replicating things? Can I scale things up? Am I using too many rules? Those kind of things you need to put into perspective before you start creating the rule. Okay. Jonathan, no worries. Jonathan, unmute yourself and speak, please.
Yeah, Mr. Babatope, this was a nice one. I understood the workflow rule to a very large extent, but but you answered the question already, because the process flow, I think that one is a little bit complicated, but I believe
I don't think so. It's the same thing. Just put them side by side. Everything you're doing here It's very, you just the different way. This one is more visual. This one is more interface driven, right? You can see it.
Yes, that's the word.
Yeah.
I believe, well, I'll put it into practice once to see how far I can go with that first.
I'm working on your projects. If you're a registered member, you'll be getting projects this weekend. Next week, you're working on your project and you're preparing for your certification. By March 15, you'll be job ready. Once you finish that project and once you've done your certification, by 2 weeks into March, you guys will start applying for jobs. Like I'm start vouching for you. You don't need to do the sales cloud, service cloud before you get a job. But it will be better if you do it to get that 100K and above job. But if you don't have that sales cloud, service cloud, you have to you have to humble yourself, right? But I want it to be ready by March 15. You guys should start looking for job, okay? So your projects will now teach you what everything I've taught you so far. Your project will now be like the icing on the cake because you now master all those object creation. It can be very challenging. It can be very challenging, but that's the whole idea, right? To do what you're going to be expecting at work.
To do.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries. Afia, please.
My question is regarding the process builder. Are you able to check for different objects? Because I know you chose the student one. What if you wanted to check something in leads or something not, related to one specific object? Is that possible?
Yes. So basically, you have the ability to check related objects. So if the student's object, let's say I want to check, let's clone this. Okay, I want to check if the student has an exam record or something like that, anything that is related to the student. I can go to the student and I can go to department. Can you see?
Yeah.
And I can check. Okay, that is the department. I can check, but with workflow rule, I cannot do that on the field criteria check or except the formula. And when I'm creating an action, I can also get value that is related to something else within the let me see field reference. I should be able to check again. I can check the department with the field reference. So you can check downwards and you can also check upwards. Let's say we started with exam record. Exam record can check up to students, but with workflow rule, you cannot do that. You cannot do parent-child unless it's a master detail relationship. You cannot do that kind of relationship with the workflow, and it's only one level you can get to work. It's called cross-object formula. You cannot do that unless it's a parent-child relationship in workflow. But with process builder, you can do anything as long as they are related, and you can look it up. So that's the advantage of process builder as well. You have that liberty to look up and to look down, as long as they are related. Okay?
Okay, as long as they're related. Got it. Yes. Thank you.
Good stuff. So let me just ask you guys one or two questions and you tell me what you would use in this case, okay? Let me open up the floor, but please, once you speak, you can actually raise up your hand to speak and drop your hand down now, then raise it up if you want to speak to answer the question, okay? So I can unmute you. An opportunity is created in the system, okay? And the sales manager of the sales rep that created that record needs to be notified with an email. What would you use to do this? A simple scenario. I want to send an email. Speak up here.
The workflow and the email alert.
Good. Now I'm going to read this. If a sales manager wants to be notified of opportunities whose value is greater than $20,000 and would like to be notified if any changes are made to the opportunity, okay? If any changes are made to the opportunity, if the opportunity is created with a value $30,000, the criteria is met and an alert is sent to the director. Later, the status of the opportunity is changed and the value of $30,000 has not changed. The rule criteria is met and another alert is sent to the director. What kind of criteria would what kind of automation would you use for this? So the problem is the question is, I have already sent an email because a criteria is greater than $20,000. Now I've updated this opportunity, and the value hasn't changed. Okay, what criteria? The criteria is subsequent. Let me see this. Let me see the criteria again. This is the criteria we're selecting. Okay. So what kind? Okay, I've already given you anyway. What kind of automation tool do you want to use for this? If you had to use an automation tool, what kind of automation tool would you use for this? Because you're sending out an email, okay? But you don't want to send an email every time a criteria is met. Okay, am I okay? I think Laura, can you unmute yourself and speak? Just so I'm making sense. What
we use the workflow rule.
And you use the workflow rule, right? Okay, what kind of condition would you put for this?
I'll use the created and anytime it's edited to. Now,
again, apart from that, what would be this criteria here? That's what I'm interested in. What would you do here? This is what usually cause wahala whenever people are doing this operation, because this one is easier to figure out, right? But what would you do here? What would you do? Tell me. You're checking something. You're saying the value, if it's greater than $20,000, send an email, right? Okay. Now, if you've selected this, what criteria, if you have something change, I wanted you to say that word change, right? If you have something change, let's say you're checking another thing that is change. If you have that stuff change, what kind of formula would you use to represent anything like a field that is changed and you want that action to take place? On any opportunity, it doesn't have to be value, it could be anything.
Let me think about this.
Anyway, I gave you like an answer, right? The value is changed, like you're checking whether the value is $20,000, right? I'm just saying what could trigger this workflow again if it's not $20,000. I'm saying, let's say, you want to check something. Let's say you're not given a criteria to check the value, or you're given a criteria to check the value plus something else. How would you trigger that stuff if it is not checking the value of the opportunity? Tell me anything. I just want you to think like anything. Doesn't have to be value. What can trigger this flow? What can trigger it?
If the operator, maybe it's greater than or.
Okay. Let's even make it simpler. I've asked you to create a workflow that would create a task. If I want someone to walk me through this, okay? I want to create a new task. Okay. A new task. Anytime the stage of opportunity equals negotiation and review. Walk me through, Laura, okay? Walk me through how to create this workflow. Just tell me what to do. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see a screen.
Okay, tell me what to do. I want 2 minutes to do this. Tell me what to do. Can you see my screen? Oh, you muted yourself. Oh, I've unmuted you. Now tell me what to do. Walk me through. This is a 2-minute task. Okay. Laura is wasting time. Let's go to Florence. Florence, I'm speak. Walk me through, Florence. I want to create a new task whenever the stage is at negotiation and review.
Well, based on the explanation you gave us earlier,
no. Carry on. Walk me through. You're now here. They've asked you to create a new task anytime the stage is in negotiation and review. Walk me through right now. Walk me through. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, walk me through.
So you can click on create new view.
Sorry?
Create new rules. continue. Then you can pick your object.
What object?
I believe we're working on student.
No.
Okay.
What object are we working on? Okay, let me give someone else who's another. Patel, can you walk me through, please? Walk me through.
Okay, so create new rule, and we can select opportunity object.
No. Look at the screen. Don't imagine it. Look at the screen.
Continue with workflow rules. Object opportunity.
Tell me. Continue.
Next. Rule name, check opportunity stage.
Criteria.
Created and anytime it's edited and subsequently met criteria. The third one. Now here field stage, opportunity stage. Operator equals, and yeah, from the magnifying we can select negotiation and review. Save and add workflow action, new task, assign to, and now we can create a task.
Okay,
assign to user subject.
Okay, let's just put a due date. Okay, that's fine. Okay, and I save. Okay, that's it, right?
Yes.
Okay, now let's test
and
it.
Then activate.
Okay, you said anytime a rule opportunity is created and edited. Okay, I go to opportunity, I go to new, I create the opportunity. Okay, I give a close date. That's fine. Stage, negotiation review. Okay, save. Yeah. So let's go. Let's look at opportunity task is created, right? Which is good. Can you see the task? It's good, right? Now let me edit this and I save.
If we select the second option, then it would create a task every time we edit it, like save the thing.
That's good. Well done. That's a very use case of workflow. Okay. Well done. Well done. And let me ask another question. I think I got some questions a bit confusing the last time. Let me ask another question. A contract manager wants to be alerted 30 days prior to the end of the contract, and the contract date has been specified in the contract objects. They want both email alerts and tasks created. What automation tool should I use for this? You guys have dropped your hand. Let me call really one. Really one, speak.
So since we have two, the email alert and the task, I think I'll go with the process.
We can do two actions in workflow rule as well, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can use both of them. You can use both of them. Yeah. You can use both of them. I'm just saying because you're giving a reason, and that reason does not justify that automation too. That's exactly all. Yeah. So let me read another one. When an opportunity is closed won, the amount needs to be sent to an external financial system to update their system. What would you use? Tayo, unmute yourself and speak.
You use workflow.
Why workflow?
Yeah, because in Process Builder, you can't send outbound messages to another system outside Salesforce.
Okay, that's good. Well done. Okay, so the guys, that's automation for you. The last one we're going to be doing is flow. But some people were complaining yesterday when I said we're going to have a class on Friday. I don't know why, but again, as at last cohort, we've finished admin training, and we've even done project review, and we've done a lot of things. So we are like a little bit behind in terms of our schedule. So I want to ask you guys, can everyone raise their hand put their hand down for a minute. I want to see if I can just raise your hand up if you would not like to have a class tomorrow. If you don't want a class tomorrow, raise your hand up. If you don't want a class tomorrow, we have about 200 people something in the class. So only 10 people, right? 9 people. So you guys are enjoying, I'm even giving you opportunity to. I think a lot of people don't want a class tomorrow. If we can, I'm not. So I think some people are actually looking for their reaction button. They don't know where the reaction is. So, okay. I'm just thinking, because if we have to push this back, you know, we're going to be spending an extra day and stuff like that, right? So, and honestly, I don't teach on Fridays. There's so many things on Friday. What I would do is I wouldn't have a class tomorrow, okay? I will let you guys revise tomorrow and learn this. But what I would recommend is if you're a subscriber, please try to watch the video for flow, because Monday class on flow is tough. But if you've watched the video, you understand better. Most people don't teach flow for Salesforce admin. They just introduce you to flow. But I'm going to teach you flow just for you to have a basic understanding. And in your exam questions, most of the answers will be flow. So it's important I know and I teach you flow. However, I don't want to overwhelm you with stuff. I know a lot of you guys have other plans that you want to do tomorrow. So it is fair to say we shouldn't have a class. However, I want you to do your revision. I'm going to be giving you projects, most likely tomorrow or Saturday. I'm going to give you a project. Please start working on your project. It's very important. And if you're a paid member, there's tutorial tomorrow. There is 3 tutorials over the weekend. Select whatever you want, but then again, make sure you attend. It will help you. It's going to be your last tutorial for Salesforce admin. In addition to that, if you are a standard member or you are a professional member, please try to take the quiz. The quiz would help you prepare for your exam. You don't even need me to pass your certification exam. As long as you're taking the quiz, you will be good. And I think I've put the quiz right here on the online assessment. Please do not wait until we finish the training on Monday. Try to take the quiz right now and you will be good enough for the exams, okay? You'll be good enough for the exam. And I'm expecting everyone to write their exam by March 15. Because the projects and the projects and the certification exam will be going on simultaneously. And if you're in Service Cloud or if you're in other programs, you will be able to you will be carrying on with your courses, okay? The only exception is BA and developer, which I've already met with the developers team and they know what's going on. For the BA, I'm going to meet with them on Saturday. Please try to attend that session. We want to give you the plan on how the BA will be managed and how the BA will go on from the Salesforce admin training. After the Salesforce admin training, please attend so we can give you the briefing, and Abiola, the facilitator for the BA, will be there to guide you through. So please try to attend. Do not miss that session. If you're taking the exam, this is the application to click on, online assessment, and try to take as many of these. Look at, you don't, like I tell you, if you can get 100% in the exams I give to you, you just need to book your exam and go and write it. So one of the next thing I'm going to ask you to submit to me by first week in March is an 100% results for your certificate. I'm going to give you Mock 1, Mock 2, Mock 3, Mock 4. You need to get 100%. Don't go for the exam without showing me 100%. Okay? Once you show me 100%, then you can go and write the exam. But if you're in professional, I need a screenshot of that. I'm going to give you the link to submit that. Look at the professional. I'm really, really like pushing for you guys to be successful, but I want it to be a scalable way to success. I want it to be replicated. So I don't want success to be dependent on me teaching you. I want success to be dependent on a process. So next 3 months, we deploy the same process, and even without me, the process will still be successful. Okay? And it boils down to you listening to me, you being committed to the training, and you will see the results. The results of success can be predicted before time. The result of successful people, you can see it in them before the result comes out. When I was doing my Salesforce training, before any class, I would go and read trailer. So that class would just be like I'm doing revision. Before any class, I will have watched the videos, and that class will be easy for me. So if you're coming to this class and you're lost, that means you're not preparing yourself for success. Success can be predicted before the result comes out. You can see it. And I want whatever we're doing here to be scalable to 1,000 people, to 10,000 people, because it is a process. It is independent of me. Even though I'm facilitating it, I'm pushing it, I'm driving it, but I want it to be a process, something that can be scaled. And it's as a result of following the basic instruction. When I ask you to do this, do it. So far, I think 20 people did their test today, but I asked you to do it earlier today before the class. Do it so I know that you're following the process. In addition to that, I think we have everything planned. If there's anything changing, I will let you know. Okay, I will let you know in terms of everything. If you're registered for Service Cloud, Scrum Master, you will get notification when the exams start or when the training starts. So be aware of that. And I don't think I have any other comments besides the fact that please do this test. I'm going to bring out the first session of, no, I have to do this over the weekend because we haven't finished automation. So I cannot give you a quiz on automation. If you let me do it, this training tomorrow, I will have given you over the weekend to practice. And by next week, you're already blazing the exam. But hopefully by next week, Monday, we finish everything and you're good to go. Again, I want you to start applying for a job by March 15. So don't give me excuses that you're busy. I know everyone is busy. If you know what I'm doing, you think whatever busy you are is just a child's play. But then again, I show up every night for the past 4 weeks teaching you. That's commitment, okay? It's not about the money you've paid me, but I could have easily asked someone else to facilitate this, but it's commitment for your own success. So now I'm asking you to return that energy back by committing to finishing up your quiz, by committing to getting started. Once I give you that project next week, go and do it. Finish it within 1 week. Those that were successful last cohort, they finished their project on time. People working in big organizations right now, they finish their project a week or 3 days. The guy that finished his certification the day I asked him to go and write it, he got a job before the end of the year. So this is about the process. You have to be hungry for success, then success will be looking for you. If you're not hungry to be successful, success will not be hungry to find you. It's a two-way thing, okay? So please, I know I've given you this time to revise on your weekend. Take ownership of it and revise. Don't do it because there's no class, then I wouldn't do anything. No, you have to attend the class. And I said those that are in standard, that want to move to BA, let me know, okay? And those that are in whatever professional you are, if you want to switch, the time to do that is now, because after this month, as everything will be automated. Everything we do at Blackforce will be automated. Even Rosemary that you see that she's talking to you, she'll be having people that will be responding to you. I want this system to be driven by the community. And I think we haven't really publicly launched this, but I think the booking platform is ready for those that want to book mentors that are not a paid member. So let's say you're struggling with your project and you do not pay for anything. You can actually go on our website on the booking platform and you just look up a mentor that you like. You can read their profile and you can make a booking, but you have to pay for the mentor's time. It's about $50 or $75 per hour. You can pay them if you're struggling with anything. They would be able to help you, okay? But this is for those that did not pay for membership. If you pay for membership, there is a provision for you to learn. There's a provision for you to book a mentor. There's a voucher for you. If you're on a professional path, your group leader would have given you a voucher to use to pay for this. So you don't have to use your money to pay. But if you're not a paying member, then it's your responsibility. If I give you a project, you want to review that project with a mentor, go and book that mentor time, and they would help you review that project. And you don't have to ask them to solve that project for you. That's one thing I want to get right. You don't have to ask your mentor to solve it. And I will tell the mentors not to solve the project for anyone, because the performance of the project will not be the basis of my recommendation. Do you know what Salesforce is? If you put Blackboard on your CV, are you representing me, or you're just looking to get a job? If you're just looking to get a job, I can package something for you to get a job. But for you to put in on LinkedIn going forward, you have to be representing me, and the quality I'm expecting from you needs to be there. So you don't want a mentor to do the project for you. You should do it and only ask for help. Only ask for help. And if you're not a paying, you can pay by yourself, okay? You can just go and look for a mentor that can help you with anything. If the mentor is available, you'll be able to book that mentor. I don't know which of the mentors are available, but based on whatever they've selected, I think they might be available based on what they've selected, right? So just for instance, Amelia is available 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Book Amelia and confirm that you're willing to do this, and you pay. But if you are a professional member, you don't need to come here. You don't need to come here at all, because your coupon code will not work from the front-facing website. It's going to work from the internal website. So all you just need to do is go to online booking, click on it, and you make a booking. Your group leader can show you how to do this, okay? Talk to your group leader if you need any help. Look at over the weekend, your project will be released. A lot of information will be passing across. Make sure you're updated in your group. Your group leader is responsible for your success. So talk to your group leader. If you have any problem, ask your group leader. Look at, they have been assigned for your success, and there's a rationale behind it. Again, remember, success can be scaled, and you can see the result of success before your result is out. You can see where you're going before the result is out. Does anyone have any question before we end it? We have about 1 minute left. Please, everyone should drop their hand, but those that have questions can raise up their hand, and we can close for tonight. We have just 2 minutes left. Do you have any questions? Any questions? I know a few hands are still being raised. Please drop them so I know those that really want to ask questions. Tayo, unmute yourself and speak if you have a question.
Yeah, thank you so much for the class so far. I just want to ask, how can basic members leverage on the quiz? Because on the portal, when I log in, I don't have access to the quiz. How can we have access? Can we upgrade or something, or do we have to pay separately for that?
If you're going to be upgrading, you're going to be upgrading to standard member, okay? So there is no provision for $25. I gave people $25 last quarter, and they almost got me into trouble, okay? So if you want to have access to the quiz, have access to mentors, have access to projects, then just upgrade to standard and you have access to it. Although you'll have missed a lot because we have clinics, we have tutorials, but you can always watch those videos if you want. However, if you want to do the quiz, you will need to upgrade to a standard member, which I already explained at the beginning of the training, okay?
Yeah, and will that give me access to the past videos, past clinic videos and all of that too?
Yes. Upgrading would give you access to the past clinic videos and whatever videos, anything we're going to be doing going forward, you would have access to it, okay?
Okay, and how do I do that? Because I don't think I can do that anymore on the platform.
I can enable that. I think tonight I can enable that. You just go to Blackforce and you will be able to subscribe. But I think currently it is disabled because people were paying when we asked them not to pay, which obviously is a good thing. But then again, we just wanted to have some form of organization. And yeah, I think you go to subscription. When you go to my learning, okay, click on my learning, you go to subscription, and currently it is disabled, but I will enable this standard again. But remember, you will not have clinic access or whatever it is, okay? You just have access to what we've done in terms of videos, and you'll still be able to do all this stuff, okay? You have access to certification, you have access to resume templates, you have access to projects and the likes, but you wouldn't have, I wouldn't organize another clinic session for you guys specifically. That's what I'm trying to say, okay?
Okay, yeah. That's fair enough. Yeah.
Or obviously,
will there be a discount on that?
No, there's no discount. There's no discount. The only discount we can probably have is on professional, not on standard. The standard there's so much stuff you're gaining from the standard. The only thing professional are gaining is a work experience and mentorship hours, because this stuff takes time and effort to organize. Other than that, you are gaining a lot of things that will help you become successful. I've already predicted this stuff. It's not up to you to believe me or not that you'll be successful if you are committed. I'm on it. Obviously, I've done the homework, and I know that those that are on this path, if they've committed to whatever training I've given them, they will be getting that job in the next 3 months to 6 months. I can almost see it. But then again, it's up to them to believe that. And if you're on standard, you will gain enough skills for Salesforce that you don't even need professional to be successful. However, you're limited in terms of what you will learn. Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, those are very interesting, this thing. Like Service Cloud is one of the best things that ever happened to Salesforce, because you can use Service Cloud to even manage small businesses. Imagine potential businesses you can consult for. I don't know why people look for jobs. The reason why I get jobs is because they're paying me enough to not even focus on other things that Salesforce can do. Imagine if you are getting contract from 100 businesses in Ontario that are paying you 10,000 every month or every installation of Salesforce. Do you know how much you can make in a year just by doing that? And everything you'll be doing, I've taught you. Everything you'll be doing, I've taught you. That means if you're on this professional path, you don't need a job to be successful. But then again, people like to have a job, so it's okay to have a job. But then again, after this professional training, most of you would not need a job. If you're very entrepreneurial in nature, you can start creating businesses that just install Salesforce for people. Based on the videos, you can watch and follow those videos and start doing it. But again, a lot of people only people can take courage in that, okay? But I wouldn't push you to do something that you don't have courage in, okay? So let's push you to where you can survive. Then from there, you can get more help. But then again, remember, everything on this booking app, you can book a mentor if you need any help, okay? David, David, you want to ask a question before we end the class for tonight? David? David, you're not asking questions, so I guess you don't have any. David?
No, that was from the hands I raised earlier. I don't have a question.
No worries. Can I stay, please? Can I stay? Do you have any questions for tonight?
Thank you, Babatope. Actually, you made mention of the trail to help us to study. So I'm just asking for that.
If you're a professional member, you know what to do. So tutorials is for professional member and standard member, okay? So if you're there, you know what to do, okay? Really one, please.
Yeah, Baba, thank you for the training. So my question is this. So I'm looking at, is there a way we could work independently as a Salesforce admin for some of us who have some full-time job, that we are still looking at, other streams of income? So is there a way a Salesforce admin could work independently, or like a part-time, or which of the areas of a Salesforce can one be more independent?
Consulting. Salesforce admin would be working for people. As a Salesforce admin, you'll be doing things for people. Consulting is where you're solving problems. Consulting is what I do. I solve problems for people. And you need a bit of, technical know-how. Do you get what I mean? Like, you cannot just be a click person alone. You need to be able to think. Like the workflow rules, automation rules, you need to think about how to solve problems based on that. What could be a very use case of workflow and why? So some of the things I show you in class, I don't even prepare them. I just come with natural thinking of my experience. Why do you want to send an email alert? Because a student has just registered. Why do you want to update an opportunity field? Because it has moved to a different stage. Those are business cases. I've used them in previous past. That's why I'm giving you that example. Okay, as a consultant, you're solving a problem. Think about it. You have how many churches in Ontario? You have how many businesses in Ontario? Find a solution that you can make and sell to 100 people with Salesforce. You don't need to redesign the wheel. Just build a very simple app and tell them that this is a subscription to use this app. As a consultant, you should be able to do it. As an admin, you'll be a doer. As an admin, they'll be telling you to do stuff. As a consultant, you fix a problem, you move on to your next project. You fix a problem, you move on to your next project. That's how you make money as a consultant, okay? So you have to be a thinker to work as a consultant, but a doer to work as an admin, okay?
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
No worries. Ella, the last question I will stop for tonight. Ella, please.
Hi, Babatope. Good evening. Sorry, you were explaining about Salesforce consultant. I don't know if you can just throw more light on the Salesforce BA part. Like, what are the clear differences between the two for the BA part, though?
BA is just an analyst. BA is someone that talks to the stakeholder. Let's say you have a business. I have a business, Black Horse Consulting Group, and we've just won a client and want to execute Service Cloud for that client. I will not be the one to start talking to the client. I'm not that kind of person. I will tell the client he doesn't know what he wants. I will be very plain because I'm a technical person. I'm already making judgments. But a BA is someone that is very subtle, someone that is very relaxed, someone that can listen. You can not only talk, but you can listen. You can empathize with the client. You can communicate. After communication, after listening, you can write. You can write good English. You can explain things to a baby and they will understand. That's the job of a BA. A job of a BA is to translate, gather requirements, understand the pain point of the client, and turn it into stories, turn it into actionable items that a consultant, a developer can work on. Client says, the students are not getting email when they register. How do I solve that? BA would write, as a student, when I register on the platform, I should receive an email. That's the job of a BA, translating the client's needs, problems into something a developer would understand. After that, a BA will be the one to test if the requirement has been met. A BA will now go back to the Salesforce and test what the consultant has done. So as you can see, there's a process in place: communication, listening, understanding, writing, testing. So if you don't know about the Salesforce, how can you test what someone has done? Even though you're not going to be spending much time in the back end, you still need to know that there is back end and there is front end. You still need to know where you'll be spending your time on. As a BA, this is where you spend your time, in the front end. As a consultant developer, you'll be spending your time at the back end. So you need to know those differences, and it will help you even channel your career. Most of you still don't know what career you can do. But trust me, if you can talk and if you can write, you should be doing BA. But if you're very technical, you should be doing consultant. But if you don't want stress in your life, just do admin. Either way, you'll be fine. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. All the best, guys. I have to stop now. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.